Witness the first meeting between Diana and Steve Trevor in the Absolute Universe's version of Hell. Meanwhile, the horror foretold by Harbinger Prime makes its entrance on the shores of Gateway City. Can Diana defeat the big boss before the city is destroyed? Let's find out in Absolute Wonder Woman number 2 from DC Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Absolute Wonder Woman number 2. I didn't want to see this coming, but I think we saw this coming. When the Absolute lineup was first announced, the name Kelly Thompson prompted more than a few raised eyebrows, with good reason. Captain Marvel was a mess, and Thompson's migration to DC didn't show any improvement with the outright horrendous Birds of Prey, so we kind of had some doubts and misgivings, all of it completely justified. But wonder upon wonders, Absolute Wonder Woman number 1 showed uncharacteristic promise from Thompson. Sadly, with this issue, that promise appears to be evaporating very quickly. But before we dig into the current issue, how about a brief recap? When last we left Diana in Absolute Wonder Woman number 1, we learned that the infant Diana was entrusted to Circe in Hell by the gods as retribution for the misdeeds of the Amazons. We never get the full picture of what transpired there or what caused this break in their relationship, but there we are. As the infant grew into a woman, Circe came to love Diana as a daughter, teaching her history and the ways of dark magic. In the present, Wonder Woman appeared in man's world right at the shores of Gateway City to confront a horde of flying reptilian harbingers attacking from a giant upside-down floating pyramid. The issue ended with Diana entering a second round of battle against the massive Harbinger Prime. And that brings us to the current issue. In Absolute Wonder Woman number 2, we begin with Diana confronting the massive Harbinger Prime with a mix of physical and magical attacks. The horde of smaller Harbingers is unable to break Diana's defenses, and Harbinger Prime appears to be at a stalemate against Diana's prowess, strength, and abilities. After a quick conversation filled with a lot of posturing and blustering talk, Diana orders Harbinger Prime to return from whence it came. To everyone's surprise, both the military, Diana, and all the civilians in the surrounding area, Harbinger Prime agrees and just goes away. Now you might be puzzled and think after that description, huh? What? A kaiju-sized monster just decided to go away because Diana ordered it to. Yeah, it happens exactly just like that. Harbinger Prime states that returning to its master spells doom, but it would rather accept doom from its master than fight Diana. The scene ends, but doesn't really work out as plausible when you see what comes next. Then the issue cuts to a flashback in Hell. Diana walks along the shores of the Wild Isle when she spots a man washed up on the beach. After a quick translation spell, Diana learns the injured man is an Air Force pilot named Steve Trevor. Suddenly, a Hydra tentacle reaches up from the depths and snatches Trevor away for a quick snack. Diana dives into the water and wrestles Trevor away from the Hydra. She then takes the wounded body back to her home and Circe for tending. Kelly Thompson somewhat mimics the standard first meeting between Diana and Steve Trevor, portraying Steve as a soldier brought to Diana's home by fate. That said, nothing about Steve Trevor's arrival is set up or makes sense. A problem we noted in the review of issue number 1, but is turning out to be a much bigger problem in issue number 2. How did Steve Trevor wind up washed up ashore in Hell? There's no precursor, context, or lead up to make it make sense. One moment there's nothing, and in the next, Steve is just there. Very random, happens out of the blue, and there it is. A little bit later, still in Hell, Diana breaks the news to Trevor of where he is, and he doesn't take the news particularly well. The only explanation Diana can offer is, and this is a quote, "It's just sometimes where we've ended up." Sure, let that soak in. Steve asks Diana to show him where she found him. During their walk, that gives him a chance to get to know each other, planting the seed for a probable romance in the future. Wow, talk about forced hand-waving. Sure, you could make the excuse that Steve's arrival in Hell will get some explanation in a future issue, but for now, the way Thompson presents Steve's presence is frustrating, it's confusing, and frankly, it's just annoying, which is inexcusable for a $4.99 prestige comic. Remember, this is the top-of-the-line DC comic right now. This is supposed to herald in the future that's going to make DC a prestige publisher again, and this is the kind of storytelling we're getting? No thank you. We return to the present. There, Steve Trevor strides out onto the beach to greet Diana after the Harbinger Prime departs. Diana is surprised but heartened to see Trevor, giving the impression they haven't seen each other in a little while, and they last parted on good terms. Trevor explains he has orders to escort Diana to meet with his superior officer, an order she graciously agrees to oblige. The issue ends with Diana putting a small commanding officer in his place, Steve Trevor learning that Diana's Pegasus is the Pegasus, and there's a little context there, and getting a very good look at the Harbinger Prime's boss, and he's a lot bigger than Harbinger Prime. So that's the issue. Let's talk about positives and negatives, starting with what's great about Absolute Wonder Woman number 2. Despite the problems with his appearance and ongoing presence, Thompson creates palpable chemistry between Diana and Steve Trevor that bodes well for their future. The moments between them work, even if the path to get to those moments doesn't. You can see a genuine connection, a genuine sense of chemistry, and it's something that you want to buy into a little bit. Further, Diana's patient yet commanding domination of Steve Trevor's commanding officer is amusing. The height difference really sells it. Let's talk about what's not great about Absolute Wonder Woman number 2. All the engaging moments in the world aren't enough if you can't buy into the journey that makes those moments possible. Harbinger Prime's departure for no particular reason other than by Diana's say-so doesn't make a lick of sense. Is the reader supposed to somehow accept that Harbinger Prime believes Diana is a more imposing threat than its impressively sized boss, the Tetracide? It just happens because it happens, but there's no context or believability to make it so. Next, Steve Trevor's arrival also doesn't make a lick of sense, partly for the logistics of it and partly due to the timing of his arrival. Was he shot down in a war of some sort? If so, what war? This all takes place in the present, so we don't know what time frame is happening here to necessitate Steve Trevor suddenly falling out of the sky. Did his plane experience some kind of technical failure? Why is Steve Trevor the only other person Diana has ever seen in hell? Surely there have been other people that are worthy of damnation or whatever you want to call it. None of this makes sense, either because Thompson is doing a very poor job of setting it up, or because the terminology in use, things like hell versus a supernatural dimension versus the underworld, is creating some kind of false impression. Or likely it's probably just a bit of both. It doesn't work. It just feels like stuff jammed together that doesn't really fit. Beyond that, how and why are the Tetracide's attack and Diana's appearance on Earth happening at just this moment? Why won't Diana simply drop a brief word to explain how she knew the Harbingers were attacking? And how was she able to leave Hell to face them? You get all these contextual questions that should explain what's going on. All you're doing is dropping in the middle of scenes and just expected to go with it. Now, sure, yes, this is only issue number 2. You could make the excuse that you have to give the title a chance to develop and unfold in its natural time according to the structure and the plot that Kelly Thompson's laid out. But if that's the case, why is Thompson presenting so many key elements out of sequence, which inevitably will cause frustration and confusion as you hear in this review? It's this type of boneheaded story planning that caused those raised eyebrows I talked about in the beginning when Kelly Thompson was announced as the writer. Yes, sure, this is just issue number 2, so perhaps the following issues will fare better, but past performance is usually an indicator of future performance, so I don't have any hopes of things getting better. Let's switch gears and talk about the art for a second, which is another sore spot in this series. Hayden Sherman's art is perfectly serviceable, but his artsy indie style isn't doing Thompson's clunky script any favors. In the still moments where Diana and Steve are exchanging kind glances and they're having some personal moments, Sherman's style works beautifully. He's got the eyes down, he's got the faces down, it looks great, and you can feel that chemistry, and that's where that style shines. In the bigger moments, the action sequences, Sherman's squiggly inks and lack of pop completely kills the energy. Depending on the scene you're looking at, it works or it doesn't work, and that's a big problem for a superhero comic book. Final thoughts, what do we think about Absolute Wonder Woman number 2? It unveils the big boss behind Harbinger Prime's attack and introduces readers to Absolute Steve Trevor. Unfortunately, Kelly Thompson's lack of setup and disjointed narrative flow hurt this sophomore issue in a big way. And Hayden Sherman's indie art house style only suits the parts of the story that don't involve action, which is a huge problem for an action-based superhero comic. Therefore, Absolute Wonder Woman number 2 earns a 5 out of 10. It's unfortunate because issue number 1 was the one Absolute title that pushed the boundaries to try something different, but different in and of itself isn't enough. It has to be executed well. But what do you think? Did you enjoy Absolute Wonder Woman number 1 as much as we did? Leave a thumbs up if you found this review helpful, and drop a comment below with which absolute title is your favorite so far. Also, remember to click on the link in the description to read the written review, check out the variant covers and preview pages, and buy this comic to help support the channel. Your support, of course, is greatly appreciated, so thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned through the outro for more reviews just like this one.